Nick Tandy, professional race car driver with Porsche. Very good to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time. How are you?
Good, good, thank you. Just getting ready to head off to the racetrack. Yeah, but all good. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm happy to get this chance. That does not look like a Porsche Cayenne, but maybe that was just the limitations of what was available in Wisconsin.
The good old rental car department. Yeah.
So, Nick, you have been a Porsche driver for a long, long time, but you did take kind of a stint away from that, coming to race American stuff. You were racing Chevrolet Corvettes last year, but now you're back at Porsche. And I was just curious, was it the size of the engine that intimidated you? Was it too loud for you? Could you not handle the power? What was it about the Chevrolet that was too much for you?
Uh, Good question. um,
It's these hard hitting American questions.
circumstance. I mean, no, I mean, I had a great time with Chevy and GM and
I mean, how was that experience? It is, in all seriousness, it's a very different program than Porsche would run, I would imagine.
yeah, it was. And I'd raced against them for a long time in my first Porsche career, let's say. But yeah, it was different. It was a whole load of fun. I when I joined that program, it was, it was never the plan to just be for a 2 year thing, but things in racing change, and there was nowhere for these, the old GTLM or GT cars to race anymore, and
Hmm.
that was where my heart back in that kind of day lied, um, which is why I went there. When Porsche, stopped the GTE program in North America, there was kind of nothing for me there. So I went off. But now we've got this new great GTP class with these, LMDH cars and LMH cars. So I thought I'd come back and have another go, eh?
Well, I have to say sincerely that I'm quite happy to have you back racing in the United States and racing under the Porsche umbrella. I just have to admit feels more comfortable. You've been in Porsche colors for so long. And that, in fact, is a perfect segue to my next question. You've been racing production-based stuff for such a long time. You were in the Porsche GT cars in the recent years, and then you switched over to the Corvette GTLM program, which, as you say, no longer exists. But now you're back in a prototype. I mean, you won Le Mans in a 919. I mean, prototypes. I mean, you grew up as most drivers do, racing formula cars. I mean, being in a prototype has to feel kind of fantastic, right?
It does. It's at the end of the day, it's still they're still racing cars. Whether you're doing, you've got more space in the cockpit or let's say less space. These new edition of GTP cars, they're a lot bigger than what the old LMP1 or even the LMP2 are. So they're more, although they're highly downforce governed, let's say, there's still a lot of weight to them. So the actual, I would say the way you drive these new cars is more like the way we used to drive the GTLM stuff, rather than
Mm.
how I would go about, I when I did 2 or 3 years of LMP1 stuff. So yeah, like you say, I started out in stock cars, transitioned to, sedan racing on the circuits, let's say, and yeah, and then moved into single seat stuff before I ever got in a Porsche, and then I went into prototype stuff. So I've got a vast array of experience in different kind of machinery, let's say. I'm always one that wants to, I want to be involved in the best racing out there possible, against the best teams, against the best drivers in the best series, racing on the best tracks in front of the best people. So for years I saw that in IMSA and in GTLM and in GTE with the all the manufacturers that were involved, all the great teams. Now that's kind of moved into GT3, but also hypercar and GTP. So
Hmm.
yeah, the type of car you always want to drive something fast, but my enjoyment out of racing comes from the competitive aspect of it. And, you know, that could be driving a lawnmower. If everyone's out there in competitive lawnmowers, that would be the place I want to race.
Well,
Nowadays,
there
it's
is lawnmower
different.
racing in the
It's
US
not
if
GT,
you want
so
it, Nick.
yeah.
Well, that's fascinating to hear you say that. You know, you're saying it's a little bit, it's less the ultimate speed that the race car achieves, and more of how competitive the other people are around you. And certainly, uh, now that IMSA and the FIA have come to an agreement with um, a top class category that can relate, race in Le Mans, so the WEC series and IMSA series can both have their cars come in. It has opened up the competition. A lot more manufacturers, a lot of interest has been poured into GTP, and that's why Porsche is back, and it's really interesting. But you mentioned a couple of things that I think are worth talking about a little bit. This is a shockingly heavy prototype car, isn't it? I mean, it sounds, it's been quite consistent that everyone's kind of surprised at how physically big it is, and then the weight is a lot higher than you're used to. Uh, is it genuinely starting to feel more like a production car in terms of like front end performance and just the general feel of how much weight has to move around for the car to turn?
Yeah, so there's different aspects to it. When we're at speed and at high speed, you know, you have this high level of downforce which takes over. Obviously, the prototypes are, you know, they're custom designed to be as fast as possible on a racetrack rather than a car that's taken from the street or the production line and converted into a race car. And don't get me wrong, you know, those cars are fantastic racing machines, and a lot of the time they are designed with racing in mind, as well as, you know, carrying passengers, let's say. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the new prototypes, they're at high speed, they feel similar to, let's say, the old LMP1 or LMP2 or this sort of, you know, prototype stuff where you're heavily reliant on, you know, the huge grip that they create. The converse side of that is when the speed comes off, you lose that aerodynamic grip, and then the kind of the weight situation takes over, the mechanical grip side of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to bear this in mind when driving them. You know, the fact is the cars are bigger, they're safer because of this. You know, there's more room inside the cockpit for the drivers, this sort of thing. There's more headroom, more crash structures, this sort of thing. So they're safer cars for a start. But the main point that allows us all to go racing, and that's why you've seen success with this class so far, I think. You know, we're not allowed to blow the budgets. We're not allowed to spend tons of money on these things, coming up with all sorts of weight saving measures, exotic materials and parts and stuff. You know, we're locked into a cost capped measure, if you like, which means, you know, we end up with these bigger cars. You know, the heavier cars, they still have this great, you know, amount of horsepower, this great level of grip at high speed. But yeah, they're different. But as I said earlier, the fact that manufacturers like Porsche, like, you know, Acura and Cadillac, even, you know, new cars from Ferrari, Peugeot, this sort of thing over in Europe, it's the fact that the costs are controlled means we can all go racing together.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember in LMP1 when we, you know, there was 3 cars and the budgets were
Yeah,
huge.
eight figures. Yeah, absolutely.
They,
If
they,
not
they
nine.
were they were huge,
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
know, it blew itself up in the end because of this. So
yeah.
it's just the way of the sport. But yeah, the fact that we get to go racing, it's awesome. And you know, I always feel privileged to the fact that I can be one of the drivers in these teams and in these manufacturers and go racing in front of all the people that come and watch.
So I find it. I mean, I think you're kind of touching on a trend, which is even Formula One cars. They're heavier than they've ever been. You know, those things are over 800 kilos now, an F1 car, which is kind of shocking. You know, GTP, it bigger and heavier than before. And the other thing, I was talking with Jonathan Duguid the other day, and he was talking about it. There's actually not that much tire, considering that this is a top prototype class. So it sounds like you guys are often actually traction limited, and that's probably closer to what production car racing used to be like as well, I would think.
Yeah, it is. It is. You know, the fact is that we've still got a ton of horsepower going through just the rear axle.
Yeah,
And
just under 700, I believe. Is that correct?
yeah,
Ish.
yeah, exactly. Dependent on different things,
Yeah,
barometric
BOP,
pressure,
balancing
this
performance,
thing,
et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, yeah.
all this sort of stuff. But yeah, so they're still lightweight machines. Let's not get us wrong. They're over 1,000 kilos compared to the old LMP1, which was 850, 890 odd. So it's quite a big difference. And by the time you put a driver and 120 liters of fuel on board, they do become heavy, but they still got a ton of power. And trying to get that through, if we were allowed, there would be places you go where you would run a bigger size rear tire, because you become rear limited in a lot of places. And obviously, as the tires wear, you have all this power going through the rear axle, places a bit like Road America, where there's a lot of slow stuff, a lot of acceleration phases, this sort of thing. There's a lot of energy going through the rear axle and the rear tires. So yeah, like you say, a bit more like the GT class, I guess. Even though, one of the gems I thought from that kind of era when I was involved, we had open tire development. You could pick.
Ah,
A lot of people went with Michelin at the time, because they do know how to produce great racing tires. But we were open to develop our own tires. This was the thing. One of the cost caps in IMSA now and GTP is we're all given a tire that we all have to use. So it takes out this development cost of developing your own tires. But then you've got limitations with that, and you've got to work around it. But it's all part of the fun, I guess.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and then the other thing that is different about the GTP car versus prototypes, and is certainly production cars in past that you've driven, you're now running a hybrid setup. And I know that that's not completely new to you personally, racing with them, but what has it been like running this hybrid setup in GTP? Has that taken some getting used to? Has that been enjoyable? Is there interesting ways to make advantages out of your hybrid system versus the others?
I mean, it's interesting. It's an engineering project as much as something that us as drivers can make the most of. So it's been challenging. Always new technology takes time for development, and it's the more we learn with the system. Again, it's a spec system that's provided for all the cars, let's say, rather than what I was used to in a few years ago, where it was all a bespoke system and we could do whatever we like with the hybrid system. So yeah, it's an interesting project. It's always fun to learn how we can. It's not always about maximizing performance. There's a lot of efficiency that goes into endurance racing.
Sure, sure.
You don't want to make, if you make one more pit stop than the others in a race that runs green, you're not going to win. So how you can develop the system to help your efficiency of the car, also help your efficiency of how you use the tires and how the tires degrade, this sort of thing.
Yeah, sure,
It all
sure.
comes into it. So as well as on top of obviously making sure that you get the most out of the performance of the thing. So yeah, it's I enjoy it. One of the things I like with manufacturer racing and being involved with a program like Porsche or with Corvette, this sort of thing. You don't just drive the car on the track. You effectively, you're involved with the design of the car, and you can have an influence on how the actual car and the product goes out on track. And this is something fun. I enjoy the engineering side of racing a lot. not as much as the competition and the winning side, because that's what really drives me. But yeah, going back to when I started, it was all I built the cars, I maintained the cars, I engineered and developed the cars. So it's part of what got me excited about the sport, I guess.
See, I thought you raced for access to the rental car fleet, but the
Still do it.
um, the the interesting thing about the hybrid system that I find is that the hardware is all spec. It is a standardized system, but the different manufacturers, Porsche, Acura, Cadillac, and BMW, have a lot of a lot of options in terms of how they integrate the hybrid system into their internal combustion engine. And it seems like you would, as a driver, have some influence on uh, how the drivability of the hybrid interplays with the internal combustion engine, and there would be some development opportunity for you there as well.
There is a little bit. It's probably not as much as you think, because a lot of it is governed by regulation. And again, it's to take away the option to outspend the competition, which is
Yeah,
good. But there still is ways, software and code these days in pretty much everything we use or anything we do is a big part of whatever we use. So yeah, there's a lot of work done on the software side of how we can make things better. I mean, honestly, from a driving perspective, and this was even back when, now the hybrid system is probably, let's say, 10% of the total power output of the vehicle, whereas
sure.
back in LMP1 it was over 50% at times. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so, but even going back to then, the best way that we could get to use everything that the car was doing was to have it kind of automated and have it all preset in the vehicle and worked out in the pit and in the engineering office before we went out on track.
I
So as
see.
a
I see.
driver, it's all second nature, it's all natural. You just do the driving, and of course you're involved in how it works with the car and how it works with the internal combustion engine, and developing this into a system. But hopefully that's all preset in the car before you develop it through free practice, qualifying, whatever, and hopefully you've got it right for the race, and then go out and concentrate on trying to drive against the others. So
Yeah, sure, sure. So competing against the others, I mean, you and BMW have the closest setup. You guys are both turbocharged V8s. Then you've got a real small V6 in the Acura and a big naturally aspirated V8 in the Cadillacs. And it's been really interesting watching how GTP has developed over the season. Different cars seem strong in different places. You guys had a win at Long Beach. You guys had a win at the Glen for a few hours.
yeah,
And to which I apologize. That really that bummed me out, and I wasn't officially part of the team. And
yeah,
also,
it still stings a bit, I must admit.
yeah, how is it? How is driving the car? How has the competition been because you're going to? I mean, you know, Long Beach to the Glen, the two places where the car won on track. Those are about as different as you can get in terms of places. I mean, how has it been going to these different tracks and racing the Porsche?
It's difficult. Everything is, we go to a new track and everything's new. Um, we have to learn. And I mean, the good thing is everybody's in the same boat. This is the thing. We have got, I think it's great that there's variety in the class. You've got, you've got obviously different manufacturers with different chassis, different engine philosophies, like you say. Um, but ultimately everybody's more or less producing the same sort of stuff and the same sort of lap time on track. And yeah, we're still working out why or how we we are, or how we can be competitive at different sort of tracks. Like you say, Long Beach and the Glen are kind of polar opposites in the calendar. You know, we were quick at Laguna. We finished second there. We were pretty hopeless at places like most or Sebring. You know, without sort of really knowing why, and it's difficult. Obviously, the only thing we control is ourselves and what we're doing, and the development of our car. But you do see everyone's not standing still. People are getting better. BMW are, you know, I think they've improved a lot since Daytona. They seem to be really, really quick.
BMW had a lot more to improve, but they're
They
definitely
did,
coming on.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But they have,
you
you know,
guys,
they've stepped up the game, and you know, I think we have as well. We didn't have the best start to the season, but we've generally consistently been, I say generally consistent. We've generally been pretty good at race execution. You know, Penske know a thing about getting races done and winning races. You know, Porsche know a thing or two about endurance racing. So yeah, we've been happy with how we've executed. We've not always been so happy with how we've been performance wise. But as long as, you know, we're not as long as we're not standing still, as long as we're learning and we're trying to develop, then, you know, it's all good. We just have to hope that we're smarter than the rest, and yeah, it is different every time we come to a track. We're at you know, Road America this weekend. We race at Indy next, and then Road Atlanta. You know, they're three very different types of track, for three very different types of events even.
yeah,
So
oh, absolutely.
it's yeah, you don't know what's coming, but
Yeah, and Road America has been repaved on top of that. So,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
we tested here a few weeks ago, but we've come back, and even you know, a couple of months worth of weathering of the track and people running on
sure.
it, it's changed the track surface. So it's not just the cars that are changing week in week out, it's the tracks as well.
Well, you touched on my final question for you. It's been so cool to see Penske and Porsche back together again. You know, they raced in the mid late 2000s in the LMP2 class together, but this is your first time with Penske, I believe. You've raced obviously Porsche plenty, but how has being part of Penske and the marriage of Penske and Porsche, how has that been from your perspective?
I mean, it's great. It was one of the, you know, the key points as to what convinced me to come back. I always wanted to. I had a year off, but I wanted to come back and race in North America. IMSA has been a great part of my life. It's provided me with a great start of my career. A lot of fun. I've met a lot of people. So when it became clear that Porsche were going to come back in top level prototypes and have Penske involved, this was obviously part of the thinking. Everything that, you know, that Penske and Roger has been involved with, they've always been successful. It's a fact, and you know, I know that even if year one doesn't turn out the way that we want it to, of course we hope it does end the season. We've won. The car's been good, but we want to win championships. We want to win things like Sebring and Le Mans and things like this. And you know, what I do know is that the team, you know, Team Penske and everyone involved, they're not doing this program just to make numbers up. They're not doing it just to balance the books. This is a thing. It's all about trying to go racing, to be competitive and to be the best out there. And that's obviously something that all of us involved, me included, we want to try and be the best out there. So yeah, there's a common theme. Some great people around, and a lot of motivation to succeed, and like I say, and be the best. So yeah, it's the start of a new relationship. The last one with Porsche and Penske went very well, so we're hoping to
Definitely
emulate.
so.
We're hoping to emulate that and
Yeah.
provide
That car was
provide a new
lighter though.
chapter. It was a lot lighter.
Yeah. Well, Nick, this has been by far the best rental car interview I've ever had. Thank you so much for the time. It was a pleasure to talk with you. Good luck at Road America. It's a fast place. The carousel and the kink are amazing. Two corners in a car like that. It's going to be fantastic to watch. So thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks for your time. Good to talk to you.
Cheers.